Welcome to a team selection video for Game Week 37. And after this, it's only Game Week 38 and we're done for the season. And as usual, I'll be recapping how my team did in Game Week 36 and then looking at my team for Game Week 37 while also talking about my potential transfers and also the captaincy, which are all very important, obviously. And in Game Week 36, I got 50 points. I've got 2,320 points overall, and my overall rank went down very minimally from around 47,000 to 49,000. I'm just about into the top 50k, which was my target at the beginning of the season. And yeah, here we are. And there's a few disappointments in my team, of course, and I'll be talking about it. But yeah, some shining lights, I guess, and maybe elements of luck. But as always in FPL, you always have to rely on a bit of luck. But Forster in goal, as I told you before, with Ralph Hasenhüttl publicly declaring his goalkeeper rotation policy. McCarthy's going to start the next two games, which included Game Week 36 and 37 as well, and Forster didn't play. Then you look at my defence, Trent Alexander-Arnold with 6 points. He salvaged an assist and a bonus point at the end, assisting that, that incredible goal by Alisson. Wow, probably one of the highlights of the weekend, along with Leicester winning the FA Cup. But yeah, what a moment that was, and yeah, credit to Alisson and also to Trent, and yeah, that was a great moment, to be honest, even if you don't like Liverpool. On the other side of the city, though, Everton's so disappointing. And if you actually look at the amount of clean sheets they've kept at home, I think only Sheffield United have kept fewer. And in 2021, only Fulham have a worse home record than Everton. And yeah, they do very well away from home, but at home they just can't seem to get it going. They lost 1-0 at home to Sheffield United, and I had double defence. And obviously last week they both did extremely well, Keane, Digne, and whichever other Everton assets you had in defence. But this week was just a complete horror show, and 4 points between them. And it is a big disappointment, but it is what it is. At least Digne did get me those points in the double game week. Dallas with a clean sheet, and to be honest, I did expect Burnley to score, but Dallas is just someone I looked at and thought, you know what, Leeds United are looking decent defensively, and he can add an attacking return on top of that. So I'll take the 6 points, and hopefully he's got one more attacking return in him by the end of the season. Lingard blanks yet again, and it's becoming a bit of a regular occurrence, but they are facing Brighton, who I did discuss before. They've only conceded 4 goals in the last 8 games prior to the West Ham game, and obviously in the end they ended up drawing 1-1 with Benrahma salvaging a point. But to be honest, I got Antonio in specifically just for the next 3 games overall, and I just didn't have a good feeling about Bamford, and he obviously got substituted off early against Burnley. So it's not really clear-cut in terms of which strikers we should go for. Even Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I know there's a lot of hype about him against Sheffield United, and although he could have done very well, he's kind of done this before where people think he's going to do really well, like against Newcastle United at home, and it just doesn't happen for him. So there's not really any standout options up front. Maybe Iheanacho if he can carry on his form, but you look at the fixtures, and that's why I did get rid of him. And I think Harry Kane is kind of a no-brainer. And speaking of him, he did score yet again. I was convinced he was going to score this weekend. However, I did expect him to maybe score another one, and he really should have. He could have even had a hat-trick, but just wasn't his day in that regard. Vidra got 2 points. He blanked, but 2 points is better than 0, I guess. That's the way I'm looking at it. Salah captaincy, ended up captaining my highest scoring player, so pretty happy with that. And that's obviously the difference between maybe a really poor week and an average one. And then you look at Jota. He's injured up until the end of the season, and we only found out when the lineups were out against West Bromwich Albion yesterday. So it is disappointing, but I was already thinking of getting rid of him anyway, and the Manchester United, or the goal he scored at Old Trafford, should I say, that kind of made me reconsider and think, you know what, maybe I'll just use my transfers on other areas. But now it's pretty much a necessity, because even if I wanted to get another striker in and play 3-4-3 or something like that, I would have to downgrade Jota in order to get the funds I want to upgrade Vidra. So yeah, Jota really, it looks like it is time to go, and he's out for the rest of the season. And my bench, nothing really to talk about. Mendy, Greenwood, Shaw, Fernandes, they all blanked this week. They didn't have the fixture, so nothing else there. But going into Game Week 37, this is how my team is looking, and I'm very happy with it. But there is one transfer I have planned, and I'll be talking about that very shortly. But I'll talk about this team first and then the captaincy. And yeah, I look at it pretty strong overall. Mendy's in goal. Forster's not going to play, most likely, unless Hasenhüttl changes his mind, but I don't think he will. So yeah, Mendy at home to Leicester. And I do think that Chelsea could keep a clean sheet here. I know they lost 1-0 in the FA Cup final, but what a goal that was by Tielemans, by the way, against Kepa. But even Mendy probably couldn't have saved that, in my opinion. But he's in goal here, and I do think that Chelsea will salvage at least a point, and they'll do just about enough to secure the top four. And then you look at my back four, Trent Alexander-Arnold away to Burnley, and if Burnley play like they did against Leeds United, then Liverpool could have some joy there, with Trent, Salah, and maybe even Firmino or Mane chipping in with points. But yeah, I've got Trent in there. I think he's pretty much just a set and forget. He's always going to be in my starting 11. Digne at home to Wolves. Now, this kind of home record I talked about, not only in 2021, but also across the whole season, that's something that's kind of made me consider maybe benching him. But in this moment in time, I won't, and I'll be showing you my bench very shortly. But if I do make that planned transfer in mind, Digne is probably the most likely to make way. And although he's got the assist potential, although Everton can maybe finally keep a clean sheet, I don't know, they're just too inconsistent, for me to really trust them. Dallas away to Southampton, and in the reverse fixture, if you remember that double game week in 24, I believe, Dallas was exceptional and he did score against Southampton, so hopefully more of the same, but they've actually looked pretty decent recently, Southampton, and they've been getting the points. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Shaw at home to Fulham. I'm happy to have kept him. I did get rid of Rudiger instead to get in Dallas because I already had Mendy to cover Chelsea, and the fixtures weren't particularly good. But Shaw at home to Fulham, that's a good fixture, and they could keep the clean sheet there. Bruno Fernandes at home to Fulham. He is a captaincy option even, but I do think I'm not going to consider him for that in this moment in time. But at one point he was my vice captain. But yeah, he could definitely do something, and he should play. He's the type of guy who always wants to play, and rest doesn't come across in his mind, and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer will know that. Lingard away to West Brom, and I've also got Antonio, so I've got a bit of coverage in certain teams in their attack. Obviously Greenwood as well at home to Fulham, so yeah, there's going to be specific games where I obviously need a lot of returns in order to do well this week. And then Salah away to Burnley, and I'll be honest, before the Burnley versus Leeds United game, I didn't really think about Salah for the captaincy, because even though Burnley haven't been good defensively this season, I'd expect more points from Kane and Bruno against their respective opponents. But the way that Burnley played recently, I mean, it was completely horrific. And even Leeds United, they're a decent attacking team, but Liverpool, with Salah, who's chasing the Golden Boot, he could get in a few goals himself. So he's actually potentially a good captaincy option. And I think with his performance against West Brom, the great goal he scored, and also how Burnley have played, I think that might sway the thinking in terms of the captaincy for a lot of people. At the moment, I've got the captaincy on Kane at home to Aston Villa. And I'll actually be discussing the opponents and also the kind of records, at least with Kane, which have kind of made me think that I should go with Kane. But it's going to be a very tough decision. It's going to go down to the wire. As for my bench, Forster's in goal. Jota, Keane and Vidra are there. But as I said before, it's likely that Digne will be first on my bench, with Keane second, Vidra third. And I'll be bringing in one specific player who will take Digne's place in the starting 11. But in terms of the captaincy, I've got it on Kane right now, as I said before. And if you look at his record against Aston Villa, he's got 7 goals in 7 games in the Premier League and also 2 assists. He might have some more FPL assists, but I'm just counting proper assists according to Transfer Market. And then you look at in terms of expected goals conceded over the last 4 game weeks, and I always like this kind of stat in terms of specific teams. And Aston Villa are third bottom, so they've got the third worst defence over the last 4 game weeks in terms of expected goals conceded, with 7.2. Only Sheffield United and Newcastle have a worse statistic in that regard. So that's something that's played into my mind. Then you look at kind of Burnley and Fulham, and they're actually in the top half of the table in terms of expected goals conceded over the last 4, and they're actually both pretty much level with each other. And they're pretty much in the top 10. So I look at that and I think Burnley, I think they can concede quite a few goals, and even Fulham because of how good Manchester United can be offensively. But I just think that Aston Villa's defence, they've just not been good. I mean, you look at the Crystal Palace comeback against them, and Spurs could easily put on a show. And Spurs have actually been very good at home, especially in terms of the attacking numbers they've produced. They've scored so many goals, and Bale, Son, and Kane can all chip in with a few. So that's kind of come into my thinking. Then you look at in terms of expected goals over the last 4 in terms of specific players, and now Kane isn't particularly impressive in this regard. He's only got 2.33 XGI, expected goal involvements, over the last 4 game weeks, and he's not even in the top 5. You have players like Vardy, Benteke, Calvert-Lewin, Iheanacho and Wood who are in front. And bear in mind, this is the last 4 game weeks, so Iheanacho and Vardy have played a game less and they're still ahead of him. But Harry Kane alone in that Wolves game could have scored 2 or 3. So I do think, and I already said this before, he was due a haul under Ryan Mason. He got it against Wolves, and I think he could do it again against Aston Villa. But then, to be fair, you look at Salah and Bruno, their expected goal involvements over the last 4 are superior to Kane. You've got Salah with 3.38 over the last 4, which is top of any player across the whole league. And Bruno Fernandes is third for midfielders with 2.88, and only El Ghazi and Salah are obviously above him for midfielders. So it's not all about stats and it's not all about expected goals. I don't think so. I always say this. But you can even look at goals conceded for teams specifically, and Aston Villa have 9 goals conceded in the last 4, which is joint top with Crystal Palace and Newcastle. And then you look at the other opponents that obviously we're thinking about for the captaincy. Burnley, 6 goals conceded in the last 4, and obviously 4 of them came in one match. And Fulham, I mean, yeah, they've got 7 goals conceded. So all of them not particularly great defences. I'd say Fulham probably have the best at the moment of the 3, but ultimately I do think I'm going to be steering away from Bruno Fernandes. I think Greenwood actually could come into our thinking. I think he's a good captaincy shout this week. I mean, you look at the form he's been in, exceptional. But I think I'm going to be going with Kane or Salah, and I think that golden boot incentive just really pushes it for me. And I'll actually look now in terms of the other fixtures before talking about my potential transfer in Game Week 37. Manchester United against Fulham, yeah, I think Bruno and Greenwood are the standouts there, but maybe as a differential, you could go for a Cavani. The kind of problem with him is the possible rotation with Greenwood and Bruno Fernandes. They're more likely to start. Southampton against Leeds, I think Rafinha is probably a good captaincy shout, or Harrison, and he's actually someone that I've got my eye on, but both of them, should I say. Bamford, I'm not so sure about. He could still maybe nick a goal or 2, but I don't like the fact that Rodrigo's in such great form and that Bielsa just seems comfortable with taking Bamford off pretty early on. Brighton against Manchester City, that could be a potentially decent one, but Brighton have been solid defensively. And I don't know about Brighton. Whenever I look at them now, I'm not too sure about captaining someone against them. Maybe a Bruno because he has a good record against them, but other than that, I'm not really too sure about that. Chelsea against Leicester, that's probably one I'd like to avoid because it could be a tight game. It could go either way. So I'm not really thinking about that too much. And with Chelsea, I prefer their defensive assets rather than their offensive ones. And captaining an attacker against Chelsea is not ideal in my opinion. Everton against Wolves, you could maybe go for a Calvert-Lewin, but ultimately I'd probably avoid that. 2 very inconsistent teams. If Everton were away from home, then maybe I'd consider more of their options, but yeah, just not really feeling that one. Newcastle against Sheffield United, you could go for maybe a Saint-Maximin, a Willock, or a Callum Wilson, something like that, but yeah, Sheffield United, sometimes they can frustrate teams and they have the ability to just pick out a result whenever you don't expect them to. Spurs versus Aston Villa, I think it's a kind of a no-brainer. I think Kane is the standout, but Bale or Son, also good options as always. I would never really consider anyone else from Spurs, especially, just in their midfield. I wouldn't consider Moura or Lamela or all these other types of players. Palace against Arsenal, that's an interesting one. You could maybe go for a Zaha or even a Benteke. He's been in great form recently. But when you look at Arsenal's side, maybe an Aubameyang. But other than that, just too much inconsistency from both teams really to really seriously consider them. But they are differentials for a reason. They could do the business. Maybe even Lacazette. He's actually got one of the best away records this season. Then you look at Burnley versus Liverpool. I think Salah is pretty much the ideal one. And maybe a Trent. If you back them to get that clean sheet, he could maybe get an attack in return and some bonus points on top of that, and you're set for the game week. And as for West Ham, I think that's a good one too. Lingard or Antonio, I'd still back them to do very well. But I'm just not really feeling over Lingard at the moment. And I said this probably from 2 weeks ago, I would not really seriously consider him for the captaincy. But Antonio, I know he's got 2 pretty poor or kind of underwhelming performances on the bounce, but I think Antonio's still a good captaincy option against West Brom, and he could maybe get a goal or an assist or something like that. But I think that's just pretty much all of my thoughts regarding all the games and the potential captains you could go for, or even just options, the best options from each single team. And as for my transfer, potentially, I'm really looking at Leeds United, I'll be honest. And if I get rid of Jota, I've got 6.9 million in the bank. So I think Rafinha or Harrison are the standouts around that price bracket. If I could maybe have a bit more money, maybe I'd possibly consider someone like Ferran Torres as a little differential. But ultimately, in a way, I don't want to play it too risky. I just want someone that I can rely on who can just consistently get those points. I mean, there's only 2 games left, but ideally I would want a big haul from whoever I bring in. So Rafinha or Harrison, I think, are the big standouts. They're both differentials in a way. So you look at Harrison, for example, he's 4.3% owned from the entire game, and this was, I think, only 2% before his 16-point haul over the weekend. Then you look at Rafinha, 7% ownership, still a differential. I think one of them would be ideal. The way I look at it is Harrison's a bit more... He's got more explosive potential. He's got these double-digit hauls, and he could even get close to 20 points sometimes. Rafinha's a bit more consistent, and he's actually delivered, I think, in 9 of his last 12 games that he started in. So that's kind of the dilemma I have, but I think one of them will be coming in, and whoever does will be taking Digne's place most likely in my starting 11, unless I change my mind on that. And the captaincy, although I'm a bit open-minded, and I could even go for a Bruno or a Salah or a Kane or even a Greenwood, ultimately I do think I'm going to stick with Kane, and Salah will be my vice. But if there are any changes, I'll let you know in tomorrow's deadline stream, and obviously that will take place at 5 o'clock. 1 hour 30 minutes before the actual deadline, which is obviously 1 hour 30 minutes before the game start. But that's all my thoughts regarding the captaincy, my team, how I did in Gameweek 36, and also my potential transfer. I want to keep it simple. I don't want to overthink it. Let me know what you guys are thinking down in the comment section below, not only for my team but for yours as well. And all the very best of luck with Gameweek 37 and also Gameweek 38. End the season strongly and get to your objectives and enjoy the football on top of that. So if you've enjoyed the video, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new around here, and share this video around with anyone who loves FPL or football. So I'd really appreciate it, and appreciate the support throughout the whole season, and hopefully many more good seasons to come. And yeah, just enjoy the football as always, and I'll see you next time.